every successful person got there by going through tough times. Success is a hard-ass teacher who likes to knock you around along that journey. You know, it takes real guts to not give up and keep going. We'll hear stories about failures and how these leaders flip the script to create success. I'm John Schultz. Join me and let's discover how success is never really overnight. Welcome to the John Schultz podcast, the myth of overnight success. I'm very excited about my guest today. First of all, Jersey. It's a Jersey company, global company, but big presence in Jersey. His name is Sampath, and he is the Executive Vice President and CEO of Verizon Consumer. Everything that goes on in Verizon is about people, consumers, and what a big responsibility you have. You've been at Verizon for a very, very long time. We're going to discuss that. And you rose all the way up to this amazing position of growth, and couldn't be a better person to be running it. And I'm so happy to have you on the podcast.
John, I'm so happy to spend some time with you, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
All right, so let's dive in. So, I love going back all the way to when we're younger, because I believe what we learn when we're younger and a lot of the challenges and how we're brought up and who we take on as mentors is such an important part of our lives. So how did your upbringing, influence your values, your work ethic, and sort of, what you are today? If you can remember.
Yeah, John, I grew up in India. I grew up in Calcutta, which is now called Kolkata. It's on the eastern side, not far from the Bangladesh border, maybe 100 kilometers from the Bangladesh border. And I grew up for the first 25 years of my life there. And my whole upbringing can be summarized in one word or three words: middle-class values. I came from a middle-class Indian family. And we have three things that are foundational to any Indian middle-class person you ask. They'll say exactly the same three things. The first is education, like disproportionate focus on education. The second is family and the broader community. And the third is respect for the order. The order can mean family, elders, teachers, senior folks. There's an order in society, there's an order in life, and you respect it. Those three are foundational to my upbringing, and almost most of the things I do tend to go back to those three things.
I mean, could there be any better three things? If the world just completely focused on that every day in our personal and work lives, I think we'd all be happier. So that's tremendous. So obviously those are great things. As you're growing up, I had different role models that, sometimes you don't want to ask your parents those questions. Or was there anyone that had a huge impact on you growing up as an individual in your younger years that maybe changed the direction of how you think or what you wanted to do?
Yeah, look, for me, it was teachers at school. I had two teachers. One was my science/math teacher. The other gentleman was, I think, a physical education teacher. It was called something else those days. I forget what it is. And they were foundational. They're brilliant. Both were brilliant. Both were PhDs in some subject I still don't understand. But they were teachers. They decided to give up their careers to come and teach, young, wayward kids like us. And they became the foundation. And I think a lot of what I am today, the good and the bad, tends to come from that foundation they have. Second, look, my home environment was a very comfortable home environment. We didn't have money, but we had a lot of fun. And as long as you did your homework, your grades were decent, you could have fun. So till very late, in fact, till I was in college, every day I used to go down, even when I was in college, even post-college in my first job, every day I used to go down, because we lived in apartments, we used to go down and hang with friends. And that's the foundation we have. And those friends remain some of my closest friends today. But teachers did have a pretty outsized influence on my career early.
That's great. That's amazing. I mean, I had a couple as well. I also had a couple people, like family friends, that became almost like my second and third fathers, actually. What were some challenges you went through? Because, it sounds good. You had all this great environment to work in, but was there anything that you think molded you that was a challenge, that was something that, didn't go the right way,
Yeah.
actually?
Look, it starts with India is a very, very competitive environment. I mean, folks who talk about, America as a competitive environment, India is an even more competitive environment, just largely given the ratio of people to opportunities. It's 100 times more competitive. And I think that was very difficult. You were good. You thought you were good. There was someone who was just much better than you. And it's difficult to shine in those type of environments. I think that's one thing. The second is, for the first 20, maybe first 17 years of my life, I was convinced I wanted to be an engineer. I knew it. I'm like, I want to be an engineer. I didn't care what engineering, but I wanted to be an engineer. And I got comfort in that. Look, a lot of my cousins were engineers. My father is a very, very good engineer. And in India, that's the thing you do. You become a lawyer, you become a doctor, you become an engineer. I couldn't be a doctor. I'll get about the lawyer thing in a bit. So, and as a result, I had to do very well in STEM. It was very difficult for me. I did okay. Look, I did fine. I was A minus student, B plus A minus student. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for me to cut through the competitive environment there. It was a challenge, and some of it came down to skill. I was a horse that was running in a course that was not meant for me, and it was difficult in that environment. One, when you're a child or a teenager, to acknowledge that you want to do something, you're not that great at it, or you're decent but others are much better, and you just don't know why can't I do math better than the others. And I think it was a challenge to work through the competition and the whole STEM
Well,
thing.
especially because it says, like you said, there's three things you're supposed to be. We all have that in all of our cultures and families, and you know, you know, that's a hard thing because like you don't want to disappoint. So you got through that, right? And you saw that. So what made you veer away from it? Like what was the thing that enabled you to actually go to your strengths rather than just something that you thought you had to do?
Look, it was when I finished school and I wanted to go to college, I didn't get into an engineering school. I just didn't. It's not like I had an option. I chose not to. I just did not get into an engineering school. Uh, I still think I would have made a good engineer, but we'll come to that later. And it was a difficult thing. I didn't have any other skill because my whole life, you get ready. I wasn't a basketball player. I wasn't a swimmer. I didn't play golf well. I barely played cricket decently. So I'm stuck here. I'm a awkward teenager, finished high school, and now. And this is where I think my mother and my father came in and helped, which is, look, you have a strong business acumen. And I'm like, what does the word business acumen even mean? They're like, no, we've seen you grow up very closely. We think you understand business well. We think you should become an accountant. Oh my God. Now, accounting in India, it's called the chartered accountant, is one of the most competitive programs in the world. Typically 1 or 2% pass it every single year. So they said, you should go and become an accountant. I'm like, oh, that's so easy. I'm getting ready for engineering school. And then now I'll just shift and, major in accounting. But it took me like a month or two to just get through that. But then I got into it. And I think that was the single biggest unlock in my life. I didn't know it. I think my parents knew it. In fact, my grandfather is a very senior accountant back then. And he knew it. And he said, you know what? This kid will be a good business guy, whatever that means. A big, big unlock for me happened right there.
Wow. So you went to college for accounting, or is that how you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I could do your taxes, John. I could do your taxes. It's coming up. Tax season's coming up. I could do your taxes. And then I ended up specializing in tax and international tax. So I'm happy to do anyone's taxes.
So, all right. So listen, and accounting's very specific, right? It's numbers oriented. It's pro formas. It's a lot of digging and a lot of focus. So what was the first job you took on, obviously getting this degree in accounting?
Look, I went and joined a bank. It was a rotational program in a bank. I was there for a couple of years. But my first real job was at KPMG. That's where all good accountants go, I believe, that time. So I was there. I was in their corporate finance / valuations group, where we valued companies. We did some basic restructuring. We did a few low-end M&A deals. But that was foundational for me. I got to understand credit in a pretty meaningful way. I got to understand where value gets created. But it was great. I loved it. And there was an added bonus. I met my wife there. So, we've been married for 20 years. So I think I got two things out of that first job, my first job, and I got married.
So you obviously did well there, right? You could have stayed there forever. I mean, the big company's still around. What made you want to change? What was the push?
I think, look, Calcutta is a lot of people, but it's a small market. And I very quickly realized I had outgrown the city. It's still one of my favorite cities in the world, but I had outgrown the cities, I'd outgrown the business opportunities, and I needed to get out of the city. And I figured the best way for me to get out is what I do best, education. So I decided to do an MBA. That's where I came to the US. I came to Boston. I got a pretty decent scholarship into Boston University to do an MBA because I knew it would help me branch out and do things different. So I committed to 2 more years of education. And then I came to the US. First time, I think it was the first or second time I'd even traveled in a plane in
Wow,
my life.
that's a big move. That's a big move. So was it something that you felt was going to be temporary, and you're going to go back? Like, how did things evolve?
Every Indian who comes has two stories. He comes with two suitcases and $200 in his pocket, and he or she says they're going to go back in 2 years. That was also true for me. The rule still holds. I came with two suitcases and a couple of $100, and I told my parents I'll be back in 2 years. And but the story, unfortunately, was different.
And why that change? I'm curious.
I
Because it's
really
hard. Like, you're
enjoyed.
leaving you had this great family. Your family's important. What drove you not to do that?
I think it was intellectual curiosity. I really liked the American curiosity. I had a great time in business school. I tried new things. I took courses I would have never done before, but it opened my eyes up to some pretty cool things. Uh, Mostly around how curious I was. I wanted to try and learn new things. And two is I liked the meritocracy in America. Uh, there's something that was magical for me. India has it a lot, uh, and I found America very meritocratic. You had a kid, strong Indian accent, as you can see, 20 years hasn't changed it. With nobody, I knew absolutely nobody in this country, and yet you work hard, you put one foot in front of the other. I got my first job out of business school, and it's worked very well since then. But I had conviction that the meritocracy would work for me.
But what gave you the courage? I
Look,
get
some of
that it all sounds good, but it's a lot of courage to just not know anyone and stay here. And how'd you get through that?
look, I graduated in a year when the economy was very soft. I applied to I kept track of this for a long time. I had applied to, I think, 300 different companies. I wrote 300 cover letters. I had 300 resumes. I must have called nonstop. I even had a small CRM software which I had designed on my computer where I could track people who I called. It was a rough time getting my first job, but I think some of it was conviction that I could do it. And look, I had plan B, plan C, plan D. I was saying I'll study for another
But
year.
why didn't you, after 100, say, forget this, I'm going back? What kept you going?
I think it is just conviction, that I could do it, and some of it is also youthful exuberance. When you're in your early 20s, you haven't seen that much life. You feel you can do something way bigger than what you are. I think that helped. If I know what I know now and I go back, I would have taken a much less risky option. I would have gone back. I would have done something else in another country. But sometimes, uh, youth has a certain magic that I think people don't use enough.
Well, we lose it, unfortunately, right? And I think as we're all living older, we're living longer. And there, you could have a second, third career, and I hope that's where we all go, especially with so much new innovation and technology and exciting things happening that if we can add value to. So you had Adventis, you had Boston Consulting Group, KPMG. You sort of stuck in that, right? What Why didn't you just keep going? How did the change occur to get to Verizon, where you spent a lot of time too? Like, why would you make that? Because it doesn't match. It just doesn't match.
Yeah, look, I was at BCG, which is, I think, probably one of the finest consulting firms in the world. Uh, very intellectual, very academic to some extent, but just the smartest people I've ever met in my life. Uh, and I did very well there. I was a partner. Few years from joining, I made partner, and then very soon they gave me the whole practice to run. I was running the telecom practice globally. It was amazing. I was, I think, in my 20s or maybe early 30, and I had the whole global practice to run, which people tend to get much later in their career. I had so much fun. And then I realized a point which you raised earlier, which is I'm going to work till I'm 65 or 70. I think people are going to work longer. I realized it. I was reasonably healthy. Still am. I was going to work. I probably couldn't see myself do consulting for another 35 years. That was the trigger for me, which is I loved what I was doing. It was so much fun. I was traveling around the world, meeting some of the best companies, working on high profile
But
projects.
why not? Like why not? Like, if you're meeting all this and learning, which it sounds like that's what you like to do, education, I feel like the minute you stop learning, it sort of gets boring. Why would you leave that?
You outgrow a place. It's similar. I outgrew Calcutta when I grew up there. I outgrew consulting. It was similar type of projects. There's some nuance to it, but it was the same. The client management, the delivery of the project. You give a project and you move on. And that move, I always had emotional separation issues from my project. Every time I finished
That's it. Well, so you just answered it. You never really owned what you did.
Yeah.
It sort of went away, and then you felt like it was gone. And I love that you have that separate. I mean, I feel that with certain things as well. That's
I guess some of the big projects you work on, you've done the project, you're driving by, you look at it and say, oh, I wonder how the project's doing. I felt the same. So I started keeping in touch with projects I did years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And it was a trend I saw where I was so emotionally vested in my projects, but the project was not vested in me because they had moved on, they had new leadership, they had taken it another way. And it got to a point where I had to do something about it. And that was the trigger when I said, I'm going to go and get a real job. And I did that. And, I was lucky. I worked with a few of the largest companies in America. They all made me an offer. They were supremely generous and kind to me. And then I ended up choosing Verizon, and we should talk about that.
Yeah. So, all right. So you choose Verizon, which love the company. Where'd you start out? Like, how did you enter Verizon?
Consultants make shitty operators in general. And I was very nervous of that. So the first job I did was a tweener job. It had a lot of strategy, it had planning, but it had some elements of execution because they wanted to test me whether I can run a lemonade stand outside Grand Central Station in summer. It was a test as simple as that. And I almost did not pass it because I grew up in such a strong consulting environment. Everything had to be perfect. Everything had to foot from left to right, top to bottom. If a plan went south a little bit, oh my God, I just know. So for me, that was the big thing. Can I get the transition from a consultant to a basic operator? I spent almost all my time, it was called head of business transformation, of chief transformation officer. So big, large projects that the company took, mostly special projects. But that was it. That was my first real job I ever have in my life.
And obviously you did well enough, so it kept going. And, I'm looking at chronologically your history here. I mean, it took a long time to get where you are. What was the challenges of jumping around? It's such a big company. How do you ever feel relevant? And what was your mindset knowing that you loved the company enough to want to stay there, but obviously you wanted to grow? What were some of the challenges in that for you? And, because easily over this time you could have said, again, this is not for me. I'm moving on, right? I don't own this.
I think, look, I've had 7 jobs in almost between 9 and 10 years. So let's call it 10 years. I've had 7 jobs. So an average job at Verizon I've had is 18 months, which is extremely unusual for a company our size. And these were jobs at global scale in terms of size. So I think I tell a lot of folks, A lot of people come up to me and say, oh, I want to be promoted, I'm stuck in my job. And I'm doing a kick-ass job. I'm like, that's not enough. That's what gets you your paycheck every other Friday. You get promoted, you get moved on for doing the next job in your current job. And that was the mindset I had, which is I wanted to get deeper into operations. I wanted to run more things at scale. So I started doing things that were a little ahead of what my job requirement needed to be. And
Was
I've
that
kept
by
that mindset.
assisting? Because I think this is a very important thing. Because at the end of the day, everyone at every company wants to feel relevant and wants. I always find the person that can get the next person to take their job is going to be the one that can grow, right? Did you do this by going and asking to help people in the other divisions? Like, how did you go about that strategy? Because I think most people don't understand how to do that.
Yeah, because look, I think when people evaluate you, it's on a kind of a 2x2 matrix. On one end is your current performance. Are you a rock star? The other end is potential, which is code for can he or she do the next job. And look, I knew I was going to do well on the performing side. I would perform reasonably well. People were happy. But I spent inordinate amount of time on the potential piece, which is what is the next job. And part of it is in large companies, there are many things people don't want to do. Part of this is sometimes everyone wants the sexy thing, everyone wants the easy thing, the hot thing. But sometimes doing things that others don't want to do is a secret superpower that you have. And for me, I've used that every time. I've always gone and done jobs that are either been a turnaround, a cleanup, a messy situation, or something that needs a reboot. And not too many people have raised their hands. And that's where I find opportunity. And consistently, every single job I've had has been that framework. Go and do things that others are not necessarily dying to do and do a kick-ass job at it. And then that creates opportunity for you.
I totally agree. And that's what the younger generation should understand. Most of us want to move on, but we're either good or we're stuck in what we have to accomplish for our companies. So teaching them and getting someone else on board with you will only help you grow. That's amazing.
Yeah, and also I think there's a point you make, which is jobs are tough, and you have to embrace that grind. You have to embrace the tough, and you have to find some joy in it. I know it's a very weird thing to say. You got to enjoy the grind. You got to enjoy the suck. And if you don't do that, it becomes a burden on you. And then when things become a burden on you, there's no way you get out of it. So
Right.
Some of it is a mindset where I tell people, we do hard things, and we do hard things better than other people can do hard things. And that gives me an edge when I talk to my competition outside the company.
Well, I love that. Enjoy the grind. I mean, most of the time when you're done with a project, you always your war stories are what matter. Like, oh my God, when we had to go through that storm, and like you have yours, I have mine. So if we would just realize that like as hard as it is what's going to make it the most rewarding, we will have a different mindset for embracing the grind and the suck, as you say, which I love that terminology.
Yeah, and some of it is there is no easy path. If you want an easy path, you stay in your current job. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a personal choice we make. And just because something is hard shouldn't be something why you don't do it. And it also requires a mindset to do hard things. I know you have it in some of the projects you've led. You need a mindset, which is, I know I can work through this. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be the way I want it. But knowing the end goal and being flexible how you get there is a pretty important framework for me. And that was the biggest unlock for me from a consultant to an operator, is the goal is the same, but how you get there can be different.
Because we're always wrong how we're going to get there. Like
always.
We're like any startup I'm involved in, it's never the product that ends up being. At any deal I'm in real estate, that. It's always in the direction, but never how we think, when we think, or all the things that go into it. So if you just know that, and if you're younger and you realize that's what it's going to be, that's the fun part, right? And you got to embrace that. It's not easy.
I mean, who was it? I think it was Mike Tyson who said, right? when someone punches you in the face, all your plans go out of the window.
Yes.
Uh, I think that's true. Like, we do all these complex financial plans. I have one in the back for 2023, but January 2nd, 2024, that and $2.90 gets you a New York subway token because
But it's good to have a direction, because you still got to get everyone like focused on a direction and sort of a roadmap per se, but it's never what ends up. All right, so you get all the way through to Chief Executive Officer of Verizon Business, and now that where you are today, Executive Vice President, CEO of Verizon Consumer, which is, again, I think the heartbeat of Verizon. We were chatting before the show about this amazing Super Bowl ad you got to be involved in. That's pretty cool. So lots of fun new things that you're touching, but now you're it. So how would you describe your responsibilities? Because talk about having now to be the ultimate operator. You went from consultant to ultimate operator of millions of people, right? Stores, services, all the stuff that goes into it. How do you manage that, and what are some of the challenges to that?
Yeah, to just give you a sense, like my group is, $110 billion of revenue, it produces $40-ish billion of, EBITDA margin every year. We're, I think, the sixth or seventh largest retailer in the country. And we have a billing relationship with every second household in the country, where literally we send a bill, they pay us every single month. So the scale is enormous. It makes us the largest consumer group in the world in our business. And look, for us, having the key 3 or 4 things to keep in mind. The first one for me is a team. You need an organization structure that can function without you. If something were to happen to me, or I get sloppy and I get lazy one afternoon, nothing should come in the way. So how do you build a structure that is resilient? And it is very important to understand that I have this concept of DRI, directly responsible individual. Every number has an owner. Full stop. I get it in large companies. We have teams. I'll work collaboratively. I'll work in teams. We'll work jointly. I look forward to catching up. All that's good. I need a name, and I need who's responsible for that one thing. So that's very important in org design for me. And in America, there's so much matrixed organizations right now. You need 19 people to make a cup of tea these days. So having this concept of DRI is very important. The second piece where I do is time management. I'm very clear. I mark my time every day. I have a color coding system that Ida, who's worked with me for many years, manages. And I say my time is simple. I like to spend 20-30% of my time with customers, 20-30% of my time in governance, manage, and then 20-30% of my time with my teams. And I'm religious about it. I get out in the field a lot. I inspect a lot. I use the phone a lot. One of the things I do is I call people. It sounds old fashioned, but I have, on an average week, I will call 30 people without an appointment. I'll just pick up the phone and call them and chat with them. So some form of time management with an organizational framework lets you scale. But you also need to know that you cannot fill the calendar, because if I fill the calendar and I have an issue, I will never get to it. So make time for the urgent, make time for the important, and then make time for nothing so that it gets filled up in the moment.
I think nothing matters a little bit too, because like you'll kill yourself, right? But you know what's interesting? Here you are, CEO of $110 billion, company within a company, and your whole job is to figure out how you're never needed. And like that's hard, right? Because like we're striving for that our whole careers to get to that point, and the whole point of that point is to not be needed. And you know what? I find that commendable. And most of the CEOs I know of large companies, breaks it down differently, but most of it's about their team and the fact that they, they're not needed, at the end of the day.
I think delegation is a very important skill to have. And I struggled early on in my career. I really did. Because I always thought I could do something better than my team. And maybe 6 out of 10 times that was true. But just because you can do something better is not the reason for you to do it. And learning to delegate, manage is very, very important. And I think people who move from an individual contributor role to a manager role, that often becomes the biggest indicator of success or failure in that transition. Delegate, delegate effectively, manage results, don't micromanage. And I feel not enough training is given to some of our younger managers in how to do that. And that becomes a little bit of a choke point for people.
Well, and that's what you're going to do. So, what would you say is like some of the tough? Because now you come into this new position, newer. What was the toughest decisions and the most challenge you had coming into such a big thing and having to make your mark? Or you never want the same person doing the same thing. That's why there's change.
Look, I picked up this consumer role when it was not doing well. We had one of our worst quarters in our history. For 4 or 5 quarters before that was been rough. We missed guidance. Verizon never misses guidance. This is Verizon. It's a Dow Jones 30 company. We put out guidance for a reason. We missed guidance twice in a year. And that's the backdrop in which I came and took this role up. And look, the first thing I did was a leadership team. There were some folks on the leadership team I didn't think made sense, both for them and for us. So get a team that was committed. Second is fundamental focus. I think we as a company got a little distracted, John. Shiny objects, show and tell, and we had to go back to the fundamentals. We have a great value prop. So I redid the complete value prop. It was called My Plan, which is first time in the world someone had done a construct like that. We launched that. I completely rid the sales teams. We were a national structure run out of Basking Ridge, New Jersey. I broke it down to 6 markets. Each market has 8 to 10 territories. Every territory has a boss. So completely decentralized sales. And third is made a commitment to fix customer experience over 2 years and get back to being number one. So these were 3 foundational programs that we did as part of that piece. And we saw results. Fourth quarter was probably one of our best quarters in a very long time. The markets rewarded us.
How long was it for those results? Because was there any point in time, because you're making all these big moves, that it was going the wrong way and you're like, oh no?
I think agility is important. This goes back to being an operator. And it's a fine line. You need conviction in your plan, but you also need to know when you need to pivot. And that balance is probably what makes a great CEO from a not a great CEO, in my opinion. I'm trying to learn how to do that because sometimes I suffer from what I call professional impatience. I'm sure there's a less colorful word for that, but professional impatience. And you're like, oh, this didn't work. Let me move on to the next thing. No, you got to give things time to settle. You got to give times to soak. Knowing when to do that, I think is a very personal thing. It's in your gut. And as I do more work, I seem to be getting better at that. And I have a better instinct. And that instinct cannot be taught in schools. It cannot be put in an HBR article. It's very personal where you know it. There are enough leading indicators. You know there's going to be a turnaround.
That's, I think you're correct because you're scared either way. You're scared it's not going to work, or you're scared, you may have made the wrong move. And, the last thing to do is to make a fast mistake too fast, right? So unbelievable. All right. So you're doing well. What are some of the issues of today? I mean, we got so many emerging technologies. We got AI, we got blockchain. I mean, it's very confusing and it's very hard to keep up with. What would you say your biggest challenges are now going into this new innovation cycle with, Starlink? I mean, there's just things coming from every direction.
John, the cool part about my job is my customers pick up and use my product 144 times a day. It's pretty cool. An average person picks up their phone 144 times every single day. So your communication.
How much I would love the statistic of from when social media entered the world. Was it 40 times, or I mean, it's got to, or it could probably more.
Definitely, it probably grew up 4 or 5x just because of social media.
Yeah.
But think about your life, John. You're going to finish this call. I'm going to make up a scenario. You're going to call for a ride to get home. You're going to call Uber. You're not excited about what's being cooked at home, so you're going to order Grubhub. Your food is going to be delivered. You're going to have Instagram. Then you're going to go and pay some bills in the evening using your phone, whether it's in a bank or some other bills you need to pay. And then your friends and your family are going to ping you nonstop about every interesting thing and how great the Verizon Beyonce ad was. So
Which
just
was
think about
that was a good one, like that and the Dunkin' Donuts ad. Those two are the good. Those are the
so
ones I like.
so if you think about it, your phone is so foundational to what you do. Same with internet at home. The my I travel a fair bit and I have two young kids. They call me often to chat, but the minute the internet is not working perfectly, in 2 seconds I get like 5 calls. So that is a very good place given how important what we do is in society. My whole strategy as a company can be summed up in one line: I connect people and I connect things. That's it. I don't want to do anything else. So we are in a pretty privileged position in terms of our product and how it gets used. The second thing is, look, AI is something which I think is going to be a foundational technology. And maybe I go backwards. Of all the technologies I've seen, that one I feel has the most legs. you know I was never that hot on blockchain. I was never that hot on metaverse. Quantum may or may not happen down the line. But AI is an interesting thing because for the last 30 years in America, we've had a deflationary environment. In other words, products have cost less every year than the previous year. For the
Yes,
most part, if you
yes.
pull out education and healthcare, every product we use today costs less than it did 15, 20 years ago when adjusted for inflation. And the reason for that has been offshoring in China. That has been the single biggest driver of deflationary environment and labor productivity in America. That movie has come to an abrupt stop. So for the next 20 years, the only lever America has today in labor productivity is going to be AI. So I think it's a foundational technology for long-term GDP growth for the country. So I think that's probably the biggest piece I'm excited about. The second piece is, it is also an interesting technology where what the technology can do and what it is adopted for, the gap is the biggest. I've never
You
seen a
mean
tech.
use cases, right? Like where it's almost like when the internet first started. I remember like going on AOL and it didn't do anything,
Yeah.
right? Like you can like make a couple emails and maybe look up the weather.
Yeah. Yeah, you go, John at AOL.com. That's a great email address to have. But I think the gap is big. So we need to be careful not to get carried away by the exuberance, but focus on use cases. I have a vision. I want to be the world's best AI applied company. Uh, and I want to be a
What does that
benchmark.
mean?
So I don't want to design AI technologies. I don't want to have the next big model or, out Gemini or out OpenAI in their thing. I want to take AI deep into the operations of my company and fundamentally do two things. One, a better outcome for my customers. It's easier, we are more friendly, we are more relatable. So that's one. Second is drive revenue growth. That's it. Those are my two things. I'm less worried about cost. I think we can do other things in cost, but customer experience and driving significant more revenue is what I want to use AI.
And do you feel that it makes it better? Because right now, customer support on any software or any service to me is just a difficult process to navigate. Right? You never can talk to anyone, you know, and it's hard. So how will AI help that?
So I want to talk about three places where I'm very bullish on in my group. The first is customer service. I have tens of thousands of people, multiple tens of thousands of people around the world serving customers. And let's say you call in, your really good phone has an issue, and maybe the screen is cracked or there's a software bug on it. You call a rep, he or she goes, looks, searches it up in their intranet, finds a PDF document that is 60 pages long, looks for your issue, and then troubleshoots with you. And like, oh, it's not that. It's a complicated process. So I want to take the cognitive workload off my frontline teams, whether it's my service teams or my sales teams. You go into a Verizon store, call me if it's easier. But if you go into a Verizon store, there are plans, there are new plans, there are promotions. I don't want the rep to worry about all of that. I want my specialist to focus on you, John. What's going on in your life? What are your needs? How can I serve you? Empathize with you, connect with you. All the cognition I want to put in AI. So we have a co-pilot that literally walks you and the rep through a sales process or through a service environment. We are very close to launching that more broadly in our ecosystem, but it's a great use case for all this crazy technology used in production today.
It's all use cases. Just like it was all use cases once the web, Facebook, to all these apps that are gigantic now, the Magnificent Seven, the Six, whatever we want to call them. And I think there's just so much opportunity, and I think personally it's going to create more jobs, not less. That's just my view, and I think we're going to be able to be what we are, human. Like, these are all tools. Humans are not going away, and they're only going to actually get better with having the co-pilot, the person that maybe helps some of their weaknesses to become more strengths.
Let's pick up on the jobs theme here, John.
Okay.
Uh, I'm an accountant, though I don't do much accounting. I'm an accountant by education. Uh, in the early 80s, VisiCalc came, which was the first
Yeah.
real program for accounting. There were 349,000 accountants in America, accountants slash bookkeepers in America at that time. That's what they were called, bookkeepers back then.
Yeah.
VisiCalc is going to come. All accountants are going to lose their job. Everything's going to be automated. The last survey I looked at, there are 1.4 million people in America who do accounting slash auditing or some related function. VisiCalc didn't take away their jobs. It actually added 4x their job. It just moved to a higher tier what they do. The basic grunt work, the basic load has been taken off. I think most functions are going to get through this
Well,
transition.
hopefully this is productivity, right? Like for coding, if you can 10x your coding skills, you're going to be able to produce more with less. So it's going to, like, it'll affect certain things, but then other things will grow from it. It has every revolution, industrial revolution, right? Like, it's just, things change, right? And hopefully reskilling and people being cognizant of this, because I think that's important, because then that'll create a whole new industry and a whole new way for people to be excited to learn something new and be something new. So, next question. So, work. We're talking jobs. Now it's work. We've had the pandemic and this whole work from home thing. We're 3-4 years into it. What's your whole view on work from home, and, the pluses, the minuses, and where do you think this is going to go, actually?
When COVID happened, the biggest challenge I had was getting people to work at home. Because you were people who've worked in an office 20, 30, 40 years. Now they got to take all their equipment, go home. And it was a challenge. I didn't know if it would work. There was change management. The biggest challenge I have now is bringing people back to the work. And I think we've got to an environment where I don't think people want to work 5 days a week in the office. I may want it as a CEO, but I don't think people are going to do that. They like the flexibility. I think two things COVID showed them. One, they can actually work reasonably well from home. Two, they're quite productive. And three, that flexibility they have when they work from home is magical. Today is Friday. I typically work at home on Fridays. My wife's working in another office, but we'll have lunch together. It's magical. Without kids, we'll have lunch for 40 minutes. We'll catch up on things. Maybe people have errands. So I think the community has spoken. Our teams have spoken. There is a place for work back in the office. I think it's 3 days a week and you can pick 3 days, different formats, but giving people some flexibility is going to be very important. But on the other hand, complete remote work is not a good long-term recipe. There's not enough intensity. But second is, look, not everyone produces at the same level of output. And when you're working from home, there are folks who can hide. When you are not producing and others pick up your slack, it. So I don't think it's fair as a society.
Don't you think it's more the commute and not being home? And I don't know. I like getting. Don't you want to get dressed, go out, go somewhere? So is it more? Would you say commute?
I think commutes in general suck. And I'd love to get your views. I think some of our office designs don't help either. You come to an office that's crowded, that's not inspirational. It looks like the insurance office from Glengarry Glen Ross. It's not inspirational. So how do you create an environment where people want to come to work? They have some privacy, they have some places to collaborate and have fun. And so I think commute in general sucks, but we're going to, as a society, have to adjust to a hybrid model. I don't think long-term companies that want to create competitive advantage can do this working 5 days a week from home.
Yeah, listen, I think most companies, it wasn't 5 days anyway. I think everyone was flexible anyway. It just, you had to ask for flexibility, where now it's just flexibility built in. I do think that you have to make an experience come to life, almost like a hotelier does when you go on vacation in these office buildings. Like you have to have the amenities that matter. Listen, I say this all the time. Like Starbucks was the first co-working space.
Yeah.
Every co-working space or restaurant that has that ability, when I go take a break and go get something, people are working everywhere.
Yeah.
They're not home. So I do believe if you create the right environment, people will come in the right experience. And we're seeing it. I mean, our Class A plus leasing volume is up. Everyone's trying to figure out, just like retail went through its phase. The internet came. There's never going to be shopping. Okay, that's not true. And we could talk about your retail as well. That was a farce. Formats got a little less. Certain companies figured the cost of acquisition was too much just on the web, so they needed to have brick and mortar. Untuckit,
Yeah.
Warby Parker. So I think it's not ever what we think it is. But I do think there's going to be more flexibility and a new way to work. But I think the more you create the environment of success as an owner to help the tenant within their space and within the common areas, unless you're a single tenant occupant, obviously. But yeah, so we'll see. The jury's still out.
But I think my sense is we're also overthinking this piece. Is it all remote? Is it all whack? Because a lot of companies are like, you have to be back in the office 5 days a week. And I hear their employees bitch and complain a lot. I know it. I have friends who do that. And then you have people who are 5 days a week remote, and then they complain, oh, we don't get promotional opportunities. We don't get to work on cool, sexy projects.
Right,
so
right.
I think we are, there's too much college, not enough high school on this topic. It's hybrid, 3 days a week, some flexibility, create a work environment that's healthy and fun, move on.
Yeah, and I think we're getting there. We're getting there. I mean, listen, you can't expect that, it was such a dramatic change. Not, if you look at any like crazy event that we've gone through, it's always taken 5, 6, 7. Look at retail. 9/11, no one would go above the 10th floor for 2 years, right? I mean, some things will stay based on the change, and some things will revert back. And like you said, we just got to go forward, and we'll see what happens. So let's talk about we talk about where now it's retail. Being a consumer business. Talk about like, where do you see retail in Verizon's footprint, and why does it matter? And does it grow or does it contract?
Grow. I'm going to add stores this year. I'm going to add stores next year. I'm going to add stores the year after that.
And you don't feel it's cannibal? Like why are you doing that? Like, what's the reasoning behind the growth in retail?
I think part of it is the experience. If you go to a store and it's not the greatest of experience, it feels like you're going to the DMV to renew a license. Fine, that's a thing. But I'm going to work hard so that it's not like going to the DMV. It's a better experience. People want to come. They want to come. They want to see. They want to touch. They want to feel. And it's a little bit of a social experience. When people go shopping in retail, it's a social thing. They dress well. They typically take a couple of people with them. They chat. They grab a food bite. So I think retail is a social experience right now. And we have one of the best digital platforms in our industry. We know it. We grow it. But I do think a differentiated retail experience is a really good one.
So what will change? Like it's funny. I went to visit a friend the other day in the city. We went to a Capital One cafe. I was like, it was cool. Like I don't bank there, but like I actually enjoyed it. Are you going to bring some new nuance to like a Verizon store? I mean, there's so much technology changing. You sell all sorts of products. So like, what's your vision?
Look, I'll give you a good example. We have all these streaming services, Disney Plus, ESPN, Hulu, Netflix. We've become one of the largest resellers of these platforms. I think we have 11 or 12 million subscriptions right now on our platform. A large majority of them is sold through stores. People come, they see it, they understand what it is, what the plan. And when it's sold through a store, the churn is significantly lower. So adding new products, same with home internet. We launched the Verizon 5G home internet, incredibly strong product. Like, I've never seen a product with such strong NPS at launch. It's sold through the stores. People like it, they take it. You don't have to wait for a technician on Wednesday between 2 and 7, and then he shows up at 7:02.
No, I know. That's crazy.
Yeah. So new
Hopefully
product,
AI can fix that. I don't know about that though.
new products, new services, teaching. Look, you and I may be super savvy with technology. Some people are not. So come in, we'll teach you, we'll set up with you, we'll transfer your phone for you. It's an experience. It has to feel like, I tell my store managers, this is your house. Treat customers like when you treat guests at your house. It's not a transaction. It's not a one-time relationship. Look, an average customer of ours tends to be with us for 10 plus years.
Yeah.
And they buy multiple phones. So you're not selling them a $40 plan. You're selling them a $40,000 relationship. You're literally selling them a car. That's how much value a relationship is for each of us.
Yeah, and it's a core component of how we live. It's interesting. Yeah, no, I even like the Apple Store. Like you go in and like they have the Genie bar, right? Like it's a good thing. I think it gets you closer to the brand. Overall, I think companies have to be brands today more than just like that's over, right? Like, and talk to me about the influencer world, right? Like you did this commercial. How are these brand influencers impacting your business? Is it something that Verizon, being such a global brand itself, finds necessary? And how do you feel like with social media? I mean, at any one day, there could be 50 things going against the company. God forbid they go into a store and something's not right. What keeps you up at night in this new world of consumerism?
Look, we as a company, I don't think we are really great at social. I think it's a big opportunity for me to double down and do well. I do think so. So I think we have a little bit of a barbell strategy on social. We have some really big influencers, Beyonce, Tom Brady, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, some of the really strong guys, the Manning brothers. So we have some incredibly strong folks, Baldwin, Jay Baldwin on the music side. So on the front end. On the back end, we have influencers who have 50, 70, 80,000, 90,000 followers. So we're kind of got a barbell strategy on them. I think as a company, we have opportunity to connect with our customers a little better on this front. We are still a little corporate. We're a little sterile sometimes. I think there's an opportunity for us to let our brand show through a little bit. It's an important thing because people will be influenced by others. But it has to be a genuine influence. If today I come and pitch you an ice hockey stick, you should not buy it because I've never been on the ice.
Right.
But if I come and pitch you a new phone or a new laptop or some new technology, you're like, yeah, this guy may know his shit. Let's do it. So genuine, authentic influencer is important to us, but I feel we have more opportunity to do that. The second is we've committed to sports and music, Jan, as a company. I mean, we sponsor the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, different versions, different leagues.
You've gone all in. It's big, and it's big. It's like, it's tremendous.
Same with music. We are one of the largest partners to Apple Music. We have a huge partnership with Live Nation. So music and sports is our thing. We think we can connect with customers. The only thing missing in my world is food. I really would like food, music, and sports, and I'm all done in life. But
totally.
That's maybe the next thing I work on. So that's our major. Look, I can't spread my resources thin and try and be everything to everyone. But through sports and music, I want them to think of Verizon. We have brand loyalty. They have a brand association.
And psychologically, like, how do you measure all of this investment? Like, at the end of the day, it's a large amount of money, right? And like, how does that happen?
Return on invested models on this thing is ambiguous at best and spurious precision at worst.
Okay.
It's not like the models you and I grew up building where you have an IRR that's accurate to the second decimal. This one is directionally correct, precisely wrong. But at the end of the day, two things. Are we selling enough and are customers happy? If the answer is no, there's something wrong in how we are doing it. So right. Second is it's also a lagging effect. You can't spend money in March and expect results in March. So you tend to take a multi-year view over a 2-3 year view. Second is, are you selling enough with happy customers? And is there brand association with that? Like NFL is a great, we have a 10-year partnership with NFL. People associate us with the NFL, whether it's teams, whether it's clubs.
Plus you can create events and for your customers. I mean, that's why golf's so good. I mean, There's so many ways to create brand awareness, but also give customers a new way to interact with the company, right? In a cool way. So I think it's tremendous. In entertainment, the things that you're in are what people care about. So it's good.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for doing this. I mean, you're a great person. You've done a wonderful job. You're just going to keep doing great things, I'm sure. And I appreciate you taking the time on this to be on the podcast.
Hey, John, thanks so much. I appreciate the relationship, the friendship, and let's stay hungry and let's have some fun.
Absolutely. Hi, John Schultz here. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. Would really appreciate it if you would like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. Looking forward to being with you soon.